expand your awareness. We have been talking about the cause of a disease, where this disease come from, and we really start expanding our awareness. From episode 1, we talked about power of mind, how this mind affect into our emotions, possible emotional effect to your hormones and immune system, connection of a PNEI, and where this energy, the emotion has a connection. And what does this mean? The frequency with the voice and the language is all about the frequency. So we have been discussing about this conscious healing by expanding awareness. Many presenters, the doctors, healers, and practitioners share their knowledge and information in our episodes. The way to look at this whole expansion of awareness by the approach with this Zen master, Genpo Roshi. He was born as a Dennis Paul Merzel, is a Zen master. He's a founder of a Kanzeon International Community and creator of a Big Mind Zen. And in his 1980s, sensei, we call sensei, Genpo Roshi sensei, he became the second Dharma successor of Taizan Maezumi Roshi, one of the leading pioneers of Zen tradition. And he's the third Westerner to become a Zen master. So please welcome Genpo Roshi sensei to help us share this awareness, expand this awareness, what this health means to us, and how can I consciously heal our body, the mind, and the emotions. So sensei, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. So could you tell us about first of all, your creation of a big mind and combined with big heart, with this approach of a Zen principle when the Western cultural background approaching, I think you talk about voice dialogue. So how this just connect as a human expression?
Right. Well, thank you. So, of course, I began the study of Zen back in 1971, and I had a very profound awakening back then in the desert, Mojave Desert. And then I sought out a teacher, and a year later I discovered my teacher, Maezumi Roshi, and began training with him until he died in 1995. So I studied with him from 1972 to 95. And as you said, I became his second successor. Bernie Glassman Roshi was his first, and then I was the second, and I was the third, he was the second in the Western world. Baker Roshi was before us, to be approved as a Zen master in the Soto Zen tradition. So in 1999, I had been exploring since early days. I've been looking at what we can do to improve the Zen training and Zen awakening in students, with students, because I started teaching. My teacher had me teaching by 1973, and then 1979, doing private interviews with people and working. So I became very, very driven by how to help people awaken more, you could say spontaneously, more quickly, because Zen is the spontaneous enlightenment of Buddhism. And I came up with this process where I integrated some work that I started to do with a man by the name of Harold Stone, who was the creator. He and his wife, Sidra Stone, created the voice dialogue and talked a lot about disowned selves or shadows. So I was very interested in the shadow of Zen Buddhism, because we all have a shadow. And in fact, throughout the spirituality in this Western world, we tend to overlook very often the shadows of the Eastern traditions coming to the West. In the West, we have some traditions looking at shadows coming from Freud and Jung and all these great people like Maslow and people like the Stones, Fritz Perls, where we're looking at the shadow of whatever our realization is. And what I've discovered throughout the last 50 some years is the Buddha made a statement. He said, it's like looking, or not looking, but grabbing hold of an elephant with a blindfold. So you take all the various traditions, all the various enlightened masters in all traditions, every one of them had a piece of the truth. We all get a piece of the truth. the whole truth is the whole elephant. But when we touch our truth, we think that's the whole elephant. So we talk about, well, it's all love, or it's all awakening, or it's all compassion, or it's all koans, or it's all prayer, or it's all blessing. Whatever we say, it's all true, but it's all partial. In other words, no one can grab the whole elephant, it's too big. So we grasp what we can, and we take that to be the truth. So what we call truth with a capital T is, in a way, there's only one truth, and that is that there is no fixed truth. There's no absolute truth. There is no truth. That the only truth is that there is no truth, but that gives us tremendous flexibility in our understanding, because we see we only get a part of the truth. The whole truth is forever ungraspable and unknowable to us. And so, what Zen is about is the realization that it is forever ungraspable and unknowable. So, whatever we grasp, whatever we know, is never the whole, it's always a part. We grasp the whole, but then immediately it just becomes our interpretation of the whole truth, which is always going to be just partial or limited. So that's kind of the beauty of voice dialogue work and the beauty of big mind work, because it points out that whatever we see as it, we also then have to look at its opposite.
Yes, I remember the always say, "May I speak to the voice of anger?" And then it's okay. It means that there's that person that no voice of anger. So it means that okay. So who is it? If it's angry, well, so what is it, right? So that part of it, I really like that. How you contemplate the both aspect of you.
Yeah. And I think that's what's very unique about the big mind Zen practice is, even more than in the Zen tradition, I introduced the Western concept of shadow, because it's not really there in the tradition. The masters all went beyond the shadow in some ways, but we get stuck very easily in whatever our understanding or realization is, as that is it. But it's always going to be partial immediately after, because we interpret it, we grab hold of it, the ego grasps it. So it always becomes limited. So we're constantly having to go deeper, go on further, further.
Father, dig into deeper and deeper to, in the end, to really embracing to a realization of the whole. Is that the goal?
That's right. That's right. That's right. And you said it beautifully, deeper and deeper, more like an onion that we take off layer after layer after layer. And finally it's shunyata, empty. In the middle there's no point. And that's it. The point is that there is no point. Or when we look for direction, there is no direction. We look for truth, there is no truth. We look for the way, there is no way. We look for enlightenment, there is no enlightenment. But there's no delusion either. So what we don't realize is we are all, as we are, perfect, complete, and whole. But what we see never looks very perfect, nor complete, nor whole.
So that's the kind of a journey of the the discovery to deepening yourself into getting to that point of a realization.
Absolutely. And then how to actualize it, how to live it from moment to moment. And that takes a lot of time. So realization is always sudden, immediate. You have a realization, it's an opening. It's like you see something that was right in front of your face, but you didn't see it before. Now all of a sudden you see it. So we realize what's so immediately. But then to live it, to embody it, to actualize it, that always takes time. It always takes time.
So the time, the taking time is that because previously in a neuroplasticity subject, the one of the all the research and doctor talked about, it was so hardwired in the way that thinking process, the way we think and feel. So then to okay, again, realize that suddenly awakening happening. Okay, I get it, but to rewire or refire, you got to keep practicing it, creating that different circuitry, different sequence, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's where science and spirituality come together, because what science is proving, what we realize on the deepest level of enlightenment, is also science is getting to the place where more and more it's being proven. You know, when I started all this, I started with that awakening. I went to see an old friend of mine, and on his floor he had two books. They were called Zen books. One was by D.T. Suzuki, one of the founders of Western Zen, because he translated many books. He was Japanese, of course. And then Alan Watts, who was English, of course. And both had the title Zen in it. And I said, well, what is Zen? I didn't know this was 1971. No, 1970. And he said to me, Zen seems to be where Western religion, Western philosophy, Western psychology, and Western science are all headed. They're all headed towards Zen. And that made a profound input into me, an image. It's something that was like a stamp. And I've always had that Zen is where we are moving towards. And I find it to be quite true. In the Western world, scientifically, we are moving towards this absolute truth, that there is no absolute truth.
Yeah. So this is where the scientists, many quantum physicists, everybody talk about this unified field, black holes, the oneness and the wholeness. Get conversation going towards the direction, which in the end we're talking about the mastering Zen.
That's right, because we are that black hole. That's the realization.
So, conceptually, we can talk about these things. As people go like, "Wow, yeah, that sounds fantastic." So the challenge thing is that I'm sure that many people approached you, when you're practicing it. Many people suffered in the many emotional trauma, right? PTSD, through everything. What would you see as a profound from your practice? When you innovate the way that you approach the people, what type of challenge do you saw as a suffering as a human?
Well, we have what's called the six paramitas, or sometimes the principles that lead to enlightenment. There's six of them, and they're very important. And the first one is generosity. And over my years of experience, what I find is when a person comes to me and is very open and very receptive, they're very keen on learning, but they're open minded and they're open hearted. They're usually one who are also willing to give up something because it requires, in order to realize, it requires relinquishment, it requires a letting go. And so the key in all spiritual practice is the ability to let go, to relinquish, to drop things, because we're stuck in what we hold on to. In other words, when I'm grasping something, if I grab this glass of water and I hold on to it, I can't grab anything else with this hand. That's done. I can't pick up my phone. In order to pick up my phone, I have to lay this down and then I have to pick up my phone. I can't have both in a way, right? It's just an analogy. You have to learn to let go, to receive. So the first paramita is the ability to let go, to relinquish, to give the self away. And everything that we call me, that's mine and mine. So we have things that my family, my understanding, my realization, my religion, my faith, my tradition, my truth. All these things we have to drop if we want to really receive the so called truth. We have to let go of all our perceived concepts and ideas, every one of them. And that is generosity. The second one is discipline. It requires a certain amount of discipline to practice anything that's worthy of realizing. We have to be willing to practice. And so we practice meditation usually. Not other practices, but meditation is the key one. We practice sitting meditation silently, allowing things to just be as they are. So we get used to things being as they are and not as we want them to be. Because that's the first cause of suffering. We don't like things the way they are. We want them to be other than the way they are, and that causes our suffering. So the moment we can be at one, at peace with the way things are, then there's a freedom. there's a realization. You see. Then the third is it requires a certain amount of patience. We have to be patient about our practice. We have to approach it that nothing happens in a day. It takes time. The road, it takes time. The path takes time. Even though realizations happen suddenly and outside of time, development, evolution of ourself, of our mind, of our understanding, of our heart takes time. So that we have to be patient. And then we have to persevere. We have to keep going because it all requires some effort, even if that effort is towards being effortless, towards no effort. We still have to make effort to just be rather than do. So we do until we can be. Okay? And then there's samadhi is important. We have to kind of become quiet, still, find that equanimity, that peace within us. And that's connected with the breath. By breathing in and breathing out, we relinquish as we breathe out, we receive, we take in, we aliven when we breathe in. When we breathe out, we die. So we die eventually the great death of life and death. That means the ego self dies and we just are or just be. And then the last one is wisdom, prajna wisdom. And this wisdom is difficult to come by, but it's already inherent in every one of us. We all have this wisdom. We just have to wake up to it. And that's what the fifth paramita is, the samadhi or Zen. Okay? That's just a brief formula for attaining the way.
Yes. Well, that principle itself is so valuable. Just to start practicing that.
Exactly. It's very essential, very valuable.
So that's gonna start to create this shift. It's the yeah. Mhm. Wow. So I think everybody who are watching it, I think this is the kind of capturing moment that the principle that you just introduced. I think that's the number one things help them to shift from the suffering into the freedom.
Yeah, and they can find that they can just Google the six paramitas. There's also something called the 10 paramitas. I won't go into that, but they can just Google that and find out what they are and begin practicing that, or look on bigmind.org. It's all there too. Yeah,
Right. Okay. And so when people start first applying to this principle, and when you see this, all the clients and people who came to see and then for their seeking for the help, yeah, what was the common the complaints or the suffering that have you saw in your past? I mean, so many thousand people.
yeah. Well, it's a little difficult to say, but what I can say this is that we all hold the key to our own healing, and an attitude, perspectives are hugely important. So, like when I had cancer, this was way back in 2003, the first thing I did was that night, I found out that day I had cancer, and I sat down at home in my cushion and I asked to speak to the tumor in me. And the tumor or the cancer or whatever illness never lies. If you ask to speak to the tumor within and say, I would really like to hear the honest truth, the tumor is going to probably say something like this, like it said to me. You've been overdoing it. You're exhausted. You're stressed out. You've been working too hard. You're doing things that you don't really enjoy doing anymore. You're being with people you don't enjoy being with anymore. You really need to make a life change, or I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. If you stay this tired, this exhausted, this run down, this, this wiped out, totally wiped out, I will kill you. So you need to get back your own energy. So you need to spend time with those you love being with and spend less time with those that you don't want to be with. You need to do more of the things that you want to and love doing and less of the things you don't love doing. This is for everybody. Everybody should take a little inventory. How much time are you spending on things you don't like to do? How much time are you spending with people you don't want to be with? Because that is not a healthy attitude. So when you're really doing the things you love to do, working at jobs you love to do, that you would do whether you got paid for it or not. That's a very different thing than I'm doing this so I can survive. Now, I understand we have to survive. We all do. We all face that. But we can cut down a lot of things that don't bring us joy and do more of the things that bring us joy and happiness. So that's very important. We all hold the key to our own happiness. It's a decision. We make a decision. We don't realize that the decision that we have is I'll never be happy or somehow I'm looking to become happy. No, it's just a flip to I am happy, and just be it because it's always that close. But we find it very difficult at times to flip it. So then we have to work with why is it so difficult? Well, I've got this hang up or this thing going on. I can't do that. I must do this. Then those are all clues to why we're not happy and why we're not healthy. We are all fundamentally, essentially, in our truest essence, we're all perfect, we're all complete, and we are already wholesome. But the way it manifests, because it does manifest through the self, through the ego, it manifests in unwholesome, unhealthy, immature, right, and imperfect ways. But we have to live with the fact that that's what we are. We're imperfect, perfect beings, or we're perfect, imperfect beings. And you're never going to get rid of one or the other. You can't just be imperfect and not, you have to realize your perfection within it. And you can't just say, I'm just perfect all the time. You have to realize I'm also imperfect. And then that's the shadow. Whichever one we're identified with, some of us are more identified with being perfect all the time. We can't do any wrong. That's a wonderful disease, but it can go extreme where we think that there's nothing that I do that's imperfect or incorrect. Also, we can think the opposite. And whatever I do, it's never enough. It's never good enough. I'll never be okay. I'll never be worthy of this life. I'll never be worthy of all the people that love me. I'll never be worthy. That's another disease. We have to see I'm unworthy in my worthiness and I'm worthy in my unworthiness. I'm perfect in my imperfection and I'm imperfect in my perfection. That's so important to see the opposite always.
That's well beautifully said. It kind of remind me of this. What was it? This author wrote the polarity. The dance between the you go to one side with too much, right? In the perfect, perfect. If you put in so much energy, now you're really growing a shadow of imperfection, which that you can swing back again. If you go too hard, you're going to this other way. But if you go too far again, that become create the imbalance. Now so we gotta constant this balance of this perfection, imperfection. We gotta embrace that back
Right.
and forth.
And notice the sign you're making. That's the infinite sign. That's exactly how it came about. It's that. Exactly. That's infinite. And that is it. Our infinite state of being. Without boundaries, without borders. That's what I call big mind or unborn mind. Yeah, it's unborn. What is unborn? This is unborn. So that's the contradiction. And that's the problem. We all get caught up in the dualism. I am separate from you. You are not me. I am not you. You are me and I am you. And yet you are you and I am me. That's a better way to say it.
So I think I remember you said. So then, by embracing this both part of, then now that's the ultimate transcendence that can transcend.
That's right. And I use the triangle. I came up with that around 2003 or 4. It's a perfect kind of illustration so we can kind of get a visual of the perfection. The whole triangle is myself, one's life, all aspects, the good, bad, and the ugly. So that's the triangle. And the bottom corners are the dualism, like good or no good, enlightened or no enlightenment, deluded, no deluded, truth, no truth. It's always those two. And from the apex, I call it, or the whole triangle, from the view at the apex, I see that both I am perfect and yet I am not. I'm imperfect. I'm not perfect and yet I am perfect. It's that and yet. And as the whole, I don't have a judgment for that aspect of me that's imperfect. I don't judge it, nor do I have a preference for the one that's perfect. So, no preference for or against any of it, and no judgment about any of it. And if we have a preference, the preference should be for no preference. And if we have a judgment, the judgment should be towards no judgment, but don't even judge that.
Yeah, people go like,
Then there's equanimity, there's peace, there's liberation.
I mean, by just listening to your explanation, to me, like perfect makes sense, right? Then this is where people who are watching or listening, they get. I like to really them to start understand planting of those seeds. Really, what you talk about that simple, basic idea of those two. The self duality. The self, non-self. Really identify to embrace both. You can't ignore the shadow. This is one of the key elements, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And this gesture of this and this and this is that. That's what it is. So, self, Buddha, one. So there's the ego self, there's the Buddha, and they're all within this vehicle. This body, this vehicle contains everything. It's a microcosm of everything that's out there, which is a macrocosm. Now, a lot of teachings stress one side or the other. Not that the teachings are wrong, it's just that it's just partial still. And we in Zen have the teaching that there are two stages prior to enlightenment, and there are two stages post enlightenment. You see? So, first, we are not aware of enlightenment or that anything is wrong or missing in our life. But then we become very aware something's missing, something's absent, something's wrong, and we may begin a practice. That's the first stage. And then we go further into that practice and we begin a devotional practice where we give ourselves into the practice. We talked about that at the very beginning. We give ourselves to the practice in discipline, in perseverance, in patience, and so on. And then we have the great opening. There are many, many openings, many and many openings, but the great opening is complete opening. We call it Dai Kensho, not just Kensho, not seeing into nature, but great seeing, big seeing. Okay? And then there are two after where we think, okay, the first experience after is now I am enlightened and I've dropped that. And then the second one is I've dropped even the dropping of it. And that's the third place we get stuck, the second place we get stuck. So we're always stuck someplace. That's why we know we have to keep moving. Rolling stone, there's no moss. The stone, we have to keep rolling, keep moving on. Wherever we settle down, we just get stuck there. It's not wrong, it's not bad. We're just stuck and life doesn't work anymore. It starts being dysfunctional. And if we start to see that life is no longer so functional, I've lost my way, we have to come back, return back to the fundamental nature, which is no nature.
No nature. Yeah, the fundamental nature, but no nature. Yes. Wow. That's very profound. I think, yeah, there's a lot of, really, to awareness. So first of all, yeah, I think you're really introducing the awareness of that, you know, no self in the, shadow versus the yourself. Yeah. So then once we really understand, and then now all the people who are suffering from the emotional disease or the physical anything, any of that, I think now many of the scientists can prove this the mind of this the stuck mind, stuck of somewhere that can be so charged up and creating certain patterns, then that could manifest into this called a certain disease.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah. Very, very true.
So when you realize that, then you really spoke to the going back to cancer cells. Okay, they have this huge voice. Then you shift it dramatically. You let go, things that doesn't serve. So what happened to you, the cancer-wise?
Well, I did heal. And, I'm cancer free now since 2003. But the key was listening and really hearing, listening to the tumor, really hearing it, and then really putting it into action. It's not so easy to tell people. You don't have to tell people, but to start to change your way of being. I always had this open door policy. I was always available to every student. And I had at that time thousands of students all over the world. So I was getting like 180 emails a day and phone calls and people. And I was dying from exhaustion. And I didn't even realize it. It becomes so normal to be under such pressure. And the cancer woke me up. We have these awakenings in our life, and sometimes we have to get very ill to awaken. Fundamentally, if we can stay on top of it by always looking for where am I stuck, we can avoid some major tragedies in our life because everything's a teaching. We can say it's all God manifesting at this life. We can say it's all directed at God, but you also say that God is within as well as external, because there's no external or internal. And we are all manifesting perfectly, but somehow we go off. And then we have to see, well, where have I gone off? And usually it is in our allocation of time and energy. We give too much time and energy to things that are not really important and not enough for those things that are very important. And like family and children, you pay the price if you neglect them. You see, you pay the price. So you want to stay close and intimate with those that you need to stay close and intimate to.
That's the nature of flow, isn't it?
That's the nature of flow. And we have to be on top of it. That means we have to be aware, how am I allocating my time? Right now in my life, but I'm almost 79 years old. So I feel like the way I allocate my time is I spend half my time for others, and half my time for those that I call me, my, and mine. My children, my family, my dog, my wife, my students, myself, and then half the time for others. I try to balance it because I had spent all my time for others and not enough on me, mine, and mine. My kids got neglected. My life got neglected. My wife got neglected. My time got, too focused on others. So you want to balance. It's all about balance. It's all about balance. It's harmony. You have these two sides, the ego self and the bigger self. And you want to balance it. It's not just one or just the other. We think, oh, I want to become a Buddha. Bullshit. Who wants to relate to a Buddha? I mean, I wouldn't even have two minutes with a Buddha. I wouldn't want to spend 2 seconds. You want to be with a human being, right? But you have to come from knowing who you are. We have to first realize who we are, know who we are, and then not be attached to it any longer. We're all Buddha, and we all manifest perfectly, but we don't realize it. So first we have to realize it. Then we have to embody it. Then we have to go beyond it and just become a human being, an ordinary human being. The last thing any of us want to be, an ordinary person. Nothing special. But we all have to become special first.
Yes. Then you realize that we are not special. We are just being.
We are just like everybody else. We're all totally unique and special, but there's nothing special about that because everybody is so. Everybody is unique and special as they are. And we keep trying to change it and become like everybody else or be like everybody else. Then we lose our specialty. One of the things about my own teacher, my Zen Roshi, he had 12 successors, and every one of the 12 were absolutely different works, completely different, uniquely different. And yet there was a thread the same, that was same understanding, same realization. Essentially the same and yet manifesting differently. And I think I could say the same about my successors. They're all very uniquely different, and yet they all have the same core.
So that's the beauty, isn't it? Beauty of, as a life, as a human, we all different. This is we here. Japanese word hito, the person. We are supporting each other. The two bars stick each other, right? Yeah. So we are, we really depend on everybody else, right? Because we are very unique as well.
That's right. That's right. But you know, the Asian cultures, the Japanese, the Chinese, and so on, the Asian cultures are very advanced in many, many ways. The Western has something to offer. I didn't see that in the 70s and 80s and 90s, but I now see how much the West has something to offer for the brilliance of the Asian uh, philosophy or religion. But that also has something to offer the West. Both complement one another. In the South, too, South America, they have something to offer, too. Like right now, a big one are various medicines, like ayahuasca. I've never done it, but there's certain medicines that are now being introduced that also are very helpful to realization. And we shouldn't poo-poo that either, because we want all four quadrants of the earth: the north, the south, the east, and the west.
Yes. Well, it is the all collective consciousness. All yes, everything collective, isn't it? So you can't really ignore that because there's all the wisdom everywhere. So we gotta embrace all the corners of wisdom.
That's right. That's right. Beautiful. Well said.
Well, now, once I think we talk about it, we summarize that. I think everybody should be having a great, as a human experience, as long as we stay right there, the practice, stay in the zone, really going, transcend themselves, but then detach, attach, but then detach from there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can tell you a very quick voice that can help everybody.
Oh, yes, please. Yes, we need that. Help.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know if I should do it or just tell you, but what we all resist is we all resist appearing to be stupid or not not on top of our game, being kind of a fool or yeah. So the quickest way is to own that. So like the fool or the one who's stupid, like if I can own that I am completely stupid and foolish, I'm complete deluded and ignorant, it's total relief. It's a total relief. Just think about it, our viewers. Just look at that. If you can own that I am completely stupid, completely foolish, I'm just a foolish, stupid one, and own that, then I can also see that the self is whole, complete, and perfect as it is. I am carrying all the stupidity, and I can relax because there's nothing to hide, nothing to try to deceive. I can just be my foolish self, and that's it. That's Zen. You can just be your foolish self completely, not having any reservations of being one's foolish self. Because we're all fools, and we're all very self centered, and we all try to get rid of it, and we all try to hide it. We try to ignore it, but that's ignorance.
I love it because that when you're embodying that thoughts, right? So then you're basically freeing yourself. Yes, you're not being judged. Anything. Well, it is who I am. This is a part of me. It is me. So then, okay. So then nobody to say anything, and you don't need to be ashamed because you acknowledge that's just part of me.
That's right, exactly. It's a tremendous relief.
I think I'd like to share the you can edit those things too, right? My editors. Um, my son says, well, he comes home and says, my friend says that my dad is smarter than you are, and he'll say, he'll of course start reacting, right? Wow, no, my dad is smarter than you are, and so the kids start fighting, right? And they said, my wife had great wisdom when somebody said, "Is that so? Oh, that could be true." Say that could be true to the friend, then what can they say more than that? Oh yeah, your dad, well, my dad is smarter than your dad. That could be true.
Well, you remind me, uh, Kori Roshi, one of my Zumi Roshi, my teacher's teacher. He was the first teacher I actually studied with, was Kori Roshi. And his favorite saying was, "So desu ka?" Oh, that's good. Is that so? And when Maizumi Roshi saw Koi Roshi, he started studying with him at the age of 18. Maizumi was 18. And he saw him again at 42 after many years of not seeing him. And he said, "You remember back when I was 18 and I came to you with this great realization? I realized that I'm it and this is it and all that." And I was so excited. And Koi Roshi said, "Yes." He said, and he said, "Do you remember what you said?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "So Deska." He said, "Well, now I realize how silly I was and how young I was and immature." He says, "Ah, so Deska." And then I was with Roshi in 1981 when he saw Koi Roshi again after 10 years or 9 years. And he said, "You remember what I said to you 9 years ago?" And I said, "And you said so Deska." He said, "Now I realize how foolish I was then." And Koi Roshi says, "Ah, so Deska."
ですか？そうですか。あ、そうですか。そう。Yeah, I mean, that's
Is that so? Is that so? Yeah. We're always so excited about every realization and every insight. But of course, so that's good. Ah, yeah.
そうですか。So now my 7 years old, he owns that, そうですか. Got that. And his eye was got big. See, when you do that, now nobody, no, the friends cannot say more than that, right? So now you are now more enlightened. So you got that. You basically they're kind of trapped into the your actual patterns in the enlightenment. Then he's like his eye got big. Oh, that's a great strategy to say that.
It is a strategy for him. Yeah.
Yes, in a wise strategy. Yeah, very much. Anyway, so thank you so much, Sensei. Yes, everybody. So all the teaching and sharing this wisdom. So please come to quantumdecoders.com/can, CN. The Genpo Roshi Sensei's information and Big Mind teaching and link all the information there and his all this very nugget, very beautiful principles. So thank you so much for joining us and
Yeah, thank you. Can I thank Mike and Robin for listening to this? Thank you.
thank you.